Something big is happening in Cameroon right now. The presidential election has thrown the whole nation into tension because two men are claiming victory. Opposition leader Issa Tchiroma says he's the real winner, not President Paul Biya. Just 2 days after the polls, he boldly announced, "The people have made their choice, and that choice must be respected." He even released his own results, putting himself ahead with about 60% of the votes. But the government calls his claims false and dangerous, and that's when things started to boil over. Across major cities, protests have erupted, with people accusing the authorities of rigging the election. In some areas, peaceful marches turned into clashes with security forces, and tension is still rising. The Constitutional Council says official results will be out by October 26th, but the country is holding its breath. If confirmed, 92-year-old Paul Biya, who's been in power for 42 years, could extend his rule once again. So I want to ask you, do you believe this election was fair? Or is it time for a new beginning in Cameroon?
Staying abroad, to prove that you are a Cameroonian, you need to have a consular card. It means that you have your resident permit, you have all other papers. But what we are doing now is that in the past we used to fill handwriting in the cards, and it was compulsory to people to come. But now we are trying to have it online. We are trying to have it online. That is what was launched 2 weeks ago, to have all consular service, not only the consular card, online, so that they can be maybe in Edo State. They don't need to come. They will first register online. When everything is confirmed, if we need their fingerprints, then they will come. But not to come and hear that, no, you still need to do this, go back, come again. But at least now, when you are stepping into the vicinity of the consulate, it's because your application has been approved. Everything is approved. So with that too, in the future, we'll be having more Cameroonians implicated.
So back to the elections. Who do you think was
Me, I think that among the 12 political parties we have, the ruling party is well established because it's the most ancient one, is the most widespread party. So I think they will win because they are everywhere and they have a system to go down to the people. That is the system of the ruling party. They are always present. Even without elections, they are there. Why that some candidate is just at the eve of elections that we see them. But I think each country has his own way in how can I say, in learning democracy. Our own is like that. The ruling party is well spread among the opposition parties. Some are just trying, some understand very well. They are now established. So we can also see who can be second, third. Why that some is just at the eve, people don't even know them. So that is our way step by step toward democracy. But at least for us to have 12 candidates means that we are open.
Don't you think that the ruling party has an advantage of going to the grassroots because of how much it's in power?
Yes, but I cannot say that this is an advantage. This is their strategy. I can call it a strategy because all Cameroon is so small. We know one another. So all have the advantage that in a week, from nowhere, people know you. In a week time, people know you. But then they have a strategy that are things that is work. And also because you can see them having meetings even before elections. You will see them having meetings. But others, you are not really seeing them. Yes. Of course.
It's not cognizant of where he is or what he's doing.
I can have, yes.
About him saying on the ground.
Yes, it's something to take into consideration what people think. But now in Cameroon, if you take the anthropologic prism, what is our tradition? The ruler is the father, not biological father. But whenever we have a ruler, the ruler represents a father. No one changes the father. Because there is something strange happening in Cameroon, but that is true. Before, like 2 years before elections, the communities will rise up and declare that for election in 2 years or next years, it is your president that we want. It is the people calling. So we need to consider those traditions also. But I would like to emphasize that since you can see people have the choice, they are free to choose who they want to choose. Yes, our president is 92 years old, but he's good. He's good. I do believe, personally, I do believe that he's good.
Let's bring in Eric Acha, Executive Director of the African Policy Forum, a UK-based think tank. Is also Cameroonian. He joins us from London. Eric, thank you for joining us on the program.
Hello, Marshall. It's a pleasure.
A pleasure having you this very interesting occasion, which is the election in Cameroon. Did you vote in Sunday's poll? And is the Cameroonian embassy in London one of the 45 where diaspora voting is going on?
Absolutely. Yeah. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it down to London, the heart of the city, this morning to do the voting. But my associates who are out there told me the voting was going on, albeit under extremely tight security, because there were some threats of some rioting from people who are opposed to the regime, intended to go out there. So there was extremely tight security at the embassy in London this morning.
Wow, threats of protests against the ruling party. That kind of sounds like they're trying to steal the elections.
Well, Amashi, I couldn't say that. I couldn't possibly say that. But if you know what has been going on in Cameroon over the years and how this regime has been operating and how every election has been conducted in Cameroon, you wouldn't have any doubt as to why people are extremely suspicious of what could be happening behind the doors or at every polling station. There are reports already. I've been following the elections back home, getting reports coming in, and you wouldn't believe the amount of issues already being raised. I mean, the day is not over yet, but the list of malpractices being reported from Cameroon just worrying. Again, it doesn't surprise anybody, because this is how the Cameroon regime under President Paul Biya has conducted elections over the years.
If you could just, intimate us on some of the issues that are being reported at the polling units, because I myself got to witness voting here in Lagos at the consulate, and it seemed pretty peaceful. People still a bit confused about how exactly to vote. You had flyers of each of the candidates representing the different ballots, I guess, people were supposed to put in. You pick one of those, well, they give you all of it, and then you put only one of those flyers into the envelope, and then you cast your ballot. So you cast it into the bin. Was that different back home in Cameroon? Is that what you're hearing?
What you've explained there is exactly how this process should roll out. Peaceful, transparent, and in absolute serenity. But in Cameroon, I've seen video footages from Garoua, from Douala, polling stations in Bamenda and Biya, where you've had polling station officials fighting with early voters who accused them of stuffing the ballot boxes. So some entered the stations to vote and realized some of the ballot boxes were almost half full. Then they were asking, but where are these from? Because we were we were in the front of the line or at the front of the queue, and we came in here before anyone came in. So where are these ballots from? And the interesting thing is that this is being captured on video, and I believe in the days ahead, the world will see what has been going on.
But it could be taking its cue from the Malawian president who was just sworn in. Mutharika is 97 years old, so he's taken over Paul Biya as the oldest president. We don't know how long this will last. But Paul Biya himself, he does seem to be experiencing some health challenges, not just because of his age. There have been instances, even at world events, where he's had no idea where he is, no cognizance of what's going on around him. And it just seems like he's been pushed along as president in his duties. And Cameroonians are looking at this, the rest of the world is also looking at this and wondering what exactly is going on.
Absolutely. You couldn't have said it in a much more better way, because from every indication, it didn't start today, it's not last year, for years today, there have been issues about Paul Biya's health. And they keep it a state secret, because even though he's physically weak and there is every sign to show that he is unhealthy, but nobody knows what's wrong with him. His age, others will say, is weighing him down, but it is clear that he is unwell. Now the question then comes, why is he into this? there is a school of thought that believes he is being pushed by those who do not want to relinquish power, meaning he's only being used there as the figurehead to represent a system. There are those who believe he is actually the architect of that system and is determined to hang in there till, well, God comes calling. I don't, to be honest, because that's what it seems to be, that he wants to be in there till God comes calling, because there is no term limit in Cameroon. If he succeeds, which seems to be very likely, to win this election, he will run till 100. If you are aware, Cameroon has no term limit, meaning even after the 100 years in 2035, we may again see another Paul Biya crawling on a walking stick, still being a candidate for the elections. If God keeps him that strong.
It honestly beats the imagination exactly what the president is thinking, as he runs for election. But it also brings to mind, there's a common practice here in Africa where leaders have successors. They have people that they're training, grooming more likely to take over from them. Does he have? Is he grooming anyone? Is he preparing anyone to take over in case he doesn't make it to the end of his tenure?
That's a very good question, and one that has been on the mind of many Cameroonians, even those within his own political party, the CPD, because of late there have been cracks within the party, which was very united and solid behind him. But prior to these elections, there were serious division within his party, because you had those of the progressive wing within the party that believed it was time for him to either designate a successor or give way for the younger generation within the party. But because he insisted on hanging on and without showing signs of any successor being prepared, people became frustrated. I mean, people within the party, the CPDM party became frustrated. A youth wing within the party broke up, and even one of the contestants whose candidacy was disqualified was a member of the CPDM party. So there is a lot of frustration within not only his party, but Cameroon as a whole, because we are talking here of somebody who has been in power for 43 years. When I mean power, I mean being president of the republic for 43 years. If I want to include the years he was prime minister before becoming the president, it's heading to 60 years. So he's been at the leadership within Cameroon for over half a century, which is terrible for a young country as Cameroon, a country where you have a population, say about 68% of the population is made up of young people being below the ages of 35. And you have a Nigerian in power for 43 years as president. You have ministers in power since 1990, some day prior to that year, and they keep going and keep telling the young people, remain hopeful. So this election, people believe, is one that could actually change things in Cameroon, either peacefully or violently, because the young people seem to have had enough. If you look at the mobilization, if you look at the momentum that is building behind one of those who until June of this year was a member of his party, that's the Issa Tchiroma, who is the front runner of the opposition. It tells you how frustrated Cameroonians are and are willing and determined to see something happen, to see some sort of change, because they've had enough of it. And this is why people are going in today, hoping that the momentum that they've seen, the crowd that Issa Tchiroma is pulling, actually leads to something different from what they've been seeing over the years.
I want to talk about the diaspora voting, and Cameroon, interestingly, is one of those African countries where voting does take place in the diaspora. Quite commendable, an electoral reform. I believe that is good for Cameroon. But these election results, according to the Consul General again here in Lagos, the results will be transmitted electronically to Cameroon. And then first thing, Monday morning, she will be posting those, the hard copies of the ballots to Cameroon. They would be on the same page with the elections back home, mirroring what has happened back home, also in the diaspora. How confident are you that the diaspora voting is as genuine and sincere as it should be, given that they do not really have the same challenges as people back home who are voting in Cameroon?
Yeah, I think I'll join you in commending that aspect, that Cameroon actually rectify the policy to allow Cameroonians outside of the country to vote is something that should be commended. However, the process, be it in Lagos, in Abuja, in London, in Paris, in Washington, has come under scrutiny or questioning for many good reasons. For example, we had, should I say, comrades or individuals in Washington, some in Paris, who were all agitating, saying that they had realized there were names on the voters list in these diaspora voting centers that do not exist, names of individuals that do not exist. Now, given the way the setup is built, you have, or the diaspora has no control. They do not have access to actually scrutinize and expose what is happening within these centers out of Cameroon. Unlike in Cameroon, where there's a strong presence of opposition parties and their own observers, it is not the case in the diaspora, meaning there is little or no control over what the consulate or the ambassadors will be sending down to Cameroon. It is completely in their hands. And that process, nobody can challenge it. Whether they are stuffing the ballot boxes and inflating the number of people who were there to vote, look as an example, a situation in Switzerland, Geneva to be specific. It turned out that an individual who is there in Switzerland and never actually registered to vote found her name on the electoral on the list to vote. And when she went there, we don't know how that came out. When she discovered that, she became infuriated and made videos and shared that she never registered. She is surprised to see that her name is on the electoral list in Geneva. How did that happen? Then there are people who are of late that relatives found their names on those lists in the diaspora. How did that happen? So in as much as it is a good practice or a good development for a country like Cameroon, the entire process is questionable and adds to the gloomy situation that is already back in Cameroon, unfortunately.
So apart from Paul Biya, who is the 12th candidate, in this election, you mentioned two very important candidates, Issa Tchiroma of the FNSC and Bello Maigari. They both used to be part of Paul Biya's government. How confident are you that they're not cut from the same cloth with Paul Biya?
That's a very good, it's a concern that people had until recently. But for somebody like Issa Tchiroma, the one who seems to be front runner from the opposition party, because if you look at the crowd he's pulling, if you understand his background or where he has come from till this day, you would understand he means what he's out there for. He is not pretending. He's not acting there for the regime. Those concerns, Cameroonians have come to realize that he genuinely wants to see change in Cameroon, despite having worked or been in a kind of an agreement with the regime for over 20 years. It came to a point where he said, this government no longer, or is no longer willing, or can no longer deliver what he thought should be delivered to Cameroonians. And that's why he was breaking ranks. Prior to joining the government, he was an opposition leader. Just to give you a bit of a background of who Issa Tchiroma is. When he studied in France back in the 70s and in the early 80s, he returned to Cameroon. No, late 70s, early 80s. He returned to Cameroon and was working with the Cameroon Railway Corporation at the time until 1982, when Biya came to power. Then 2 years after, 1984, there was a coup d'etat. And I don't want to go into that long history. I just want to fast forward and give you a bit of a background of who Issa Tchiroma is. The 1984 coup d'etat led to many Northerners being arrested and jailed because they believe, Paul Biya and the government at the time believed that they were the ones behind the coup d'etat that probably was orchestrated by the president or the former president who had stepped down, Amadu Ayijo. Yeah. The Northerners that were arrested, Issa Tchiroma was one of them. The young man, he was arrested in 1984 and thrown in jail for 6 years and got released in 1990. That was 2 years before the multi-party system. So he served prison for an alleged crime, which he has refused to this day, that he was never part of the coup. And he was found guilty, jailed. In 1992, when Paul Biya decided to open the floor for multi-partyism, Bello Buba, under the UNDP, his party, ran for the elections, and together with him was Issa Tchiroma. Issa Tchiroma was part of the UNDP at the time. They ran as opposition parties to Paul Biya and the SDF that was the front runner, the SDF of John Frundi. Those elections in 1992 was the last chance that Cameroon had to see change, because every record shows that the opposition won. John Frundi, with the alliance that he had with the opposition, won the elections. But as it turned out, Biya was declared the winner. Frundi continued agitating as an opposition party. The UNDP formed a coalition with Paul Biya.
Maybe bring us to the present day realities about Issa Tchiroma. Well, hopefully, the elections go and Cameroonians pick who they want. How do you think that these elections could possibly change the narrative about Cameroon in the international community? Because looking from the outside in, we're looking at a Cameroon that is run down, a country that is deep in debt, a country that has failed economically. Do you think that that could change with this election?
It would change if the status quo changed. The reason why I was trying to give you a rundown of where Issa Tchiroma was coming from to where he is today was just to let you know that the person we have today as the front runner for the opposition is authentic. He means change for Cameroon. And should elections go the way they are, because Cameroonians today massively believe in Issa Tchiroma. They want him, even though he may not be liked. People believe he has what it takes to change Cameroon, whether he is the devil or the previous devil that he was. But today they are seeing a change man and are happy to give him a chance. Should the elections go the way everyone's expecting and Issa Tchiroma is declared the winner, the perception that the world has about Cameroon will change drastically, because there are many things pending that should be addressed. The endemic corruption, the problems, the economic stagnation that the country is facing, the deteriorating infrastructure, the unemployment issues, the instability, the conflicts, and many other things are all stagnant because people believe, or the world believe, Biya has no solutions to these things. Should someone with some new energy emerges, like Tchiroma, there is that belief that these things will change for the better. In politics, we say any change is good change. It may not be the change that you want, but any change is good change, because someone who's been there for 43 years has nothing more to offer. And the world believes that. Everyone knows, okay, it's Paul Biya again, another 7 years. What should we expect from him? Nothing. But should someone emerges different from the Paul Biya, it will change the system. And that will only be for the better.
Right.
And that perception about Cameroon will change, and people will look at the country differently, and maybe we'll start regaining or reconstructing its image in the face of the world. Because at the moment, it's at the rock bottom.
Eric Atcha, I understand your frustration, and I appreciate your joining us on the program. Being able to
tell me what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more breaking updates.